Good afternoon, everyone. So why are we here? I decided to make this presentation on general skilled migration visas because it will give us an understanding on how Australia selects its skilled migrants and how Australia intends to build its future, strengthen its workforce, and sustain its demographic stability. And it's a system designed to bring in the best and the brightest to contribute to our vibrant community. And we want as many people to have access to this scheme as much as possible. This is a little bit about me and we will move on. I'm going to cover 4 key parts sort of in this presentation. The first bit will be about the point system and then the application of that point system exactly, the process, real transactional work, and then also we'll look at some data in relation to SkillSelect as well. And I know that a lot of people have a general idea of general skilled migration. I've tried not to go over the stuff that we already know and look at some things that are a little bit more foundational or a bit more practical as well. First off, the point system. Okay, now everything starts with the Migration Act. Okay, here we've got Section 92 of the Migration Act. This is where it all begins. If a visa has a criterion where the applicant receives a score, so that simply is saying that, hey, a visa can have a score. That's pretty straightforward. They're saying that a visa can have a score. It's part of the Migration Act. You can't say that, it's unfair to have, a score or like the score shouldn't be there. Yes, a visa can have a score. And then Section 93 goes on to say that who assesses that score. So it's the minister or their trustee delegate. Okay, and they grant you points that meet, for the score for meeting certain prescribed qualifications. Now, the next bit is Section 94, and this one reveals the existence of 2 super important numbers. One is the pool mark and one is the pass mark. Okay, now the pool mark and the pass mark for this kind of visa, you can see them in this instrument here. And for those to be in the pool, so the pool of applicants, it's 65. And, to make a proper application, you need 65 points. So this is where the word 65 points comes from. I've always been curious about why the department says you have to have 65 points. And this is the part where it says that you have to. Okay, so it's good background knowledge. And and then in Section 96, it's the minister who gets to set this pool and pass mark. And they can do that, either by this kind of instrument, but a long time ago, they used to do it in the Gazette. So that's what it is. The pass mark is 65 points. That gets your foot in the door. If you hit 65 or more, then you're placed in a pool of applicants. And then once you're in that pool, you can wait up to 2 years for an invitation. So that is the story of how the Migration Act sets or is able to legally make a pool for people to get into and wait for their invitation. That's the Migration Act. Great. Oh yeah, and here's the part that talks about you waiting in the pool for 2 years. So that's what it is. Now that we have actually looked at sort of the legal backbone of it all, we want to see how these points are actually scored, right? And that part is in Schedule 6D, which is your points checklist. So consider Schedule 6D to be your checklist and Regulation 2.26AC as the rules on how to apply them. So it's like building your resume. Here we are, a checklist or calculator of points, and then 2.26AC providing the rules on applying those points. The points are largely based on these I consider them to be 13 factors, and we're going to go through those factors really, really quickly. So for this one, age, 25 to less than 33 years, that's a whopping 30 points. That's almost half the points that you need to even get to the pass mark and then enter into the pool. Right? So if you're a bit older, then you've got 15 points. Anything older than 45 or 45 or older, unfortunately, is going to give you 0 points. So then we've got the English language skills one. Now, how much does your English skills really matter? That's pretty important. I would say superior English. I always tell clients that superior English is really important because just from, and I'll show you later, from the SkillSelect data, you'll see that people who have proficient English or no English aren't as likely as people who do get superior English to get an invitation. So that's what it is. I mean, poor English proficiency is, consistently linked to bad employment outcomes anyway in a country like Australia. Canada also does have a similar point system in their migration system. In fact, Australia's migration system and Canada's migration system do have a lot of similarities, and it's sort of the same thing for them as well. They would prefer that people are able to, speak English in their occupation. So that's the next thing. Now here we've got employment experience. So for this one, you can get 15 points for overseas experience and up to 20 points for Australian experience. But here's sort of the catch, which is the aggregate points, right? Under the points test, there's a combined cap of 20 points in all your employment experience. So even if you're a super worker, you've got 10 points of overseas experience, and then you've got 20 points of Australian experience, you can't get 30 points, you'll get 20 points total. So it's tough, but that's the way that it is. The next bit here is this Australian Professional Year. If you've completed something called an Australian Professional Year program, that's an easy 5 points. And you can get them when you are studying something like accounting or ICT, computing or engineering. So a lot of people who have applied, or who have completed a degree in sort of the computing area, a lot of these people, they register for this Australian Professional Year program, and that just gives them an extra 5 points, and they can put that on their EOY. However, this is only valid for 4 years. So I have had clients in the past who have done their professional year quite a long time ago, still haven't received an invitation, and finally they've had to minus those 5 points because just the professional year just wasn't valid. Then we've got our educational qualifications. So a doctorate from a recognized institution, that will give you a good 20 points. This is a doctorate. I had a colleague a long time ago who thought that a doctor was the same as a doctorate, and the doctor got an invitation, but then the 190 was refused because a doctorate is not the same as being a doctor. But luckily, because Australia needs so many doctors, the person was able to lodge an EOI again, and they got invited again for, it might have been the 189. And then in the end, they were able to lodge the 189 visa. So very, very lucky, even though the client probably had a better chance than others. So doctorate meaning like a PhD. Most of your clients, I think, will probably have a bachelor degree, as a lot of people do. So that's 15 points. That's just follow this checklist, and you'll see how many points are given to who. You could also have a specialist educational qualification. So if you have a master's degree by research, or a doctorate degree from an Australian educational institution that includes at least 2 years of academic study in a relevant field, then you could get an extra 10 points. So quite clearly, Australia is trying to get these really, really highly skilled and highly knowledgeable people in areas such as these areas. So you can see that is what direction Australia is trying to head into. We've got a lot of climate change and sort of related areas, engineering related areas as well, and information technology areas. So if anybody's done a PhD or a master's of research, so master's course where it's research, not coursework, they're two different things. So for example, the JD wouldn't be a master's in research, it would be a coursework kind of thing. But for the Masters of Research, you need to have like a thesis and everything. If they're doing something like that, then they could, and it's in one of these fields, they could get an extra 10 points on their EOY. Australian study qualifications, of course, if you meet the ASR, then you can get 5 points. Most people who have completed a student visa and have gone on to be granted the 485 visa is just tick for that one. Do remember, however, that it needs to be, I try to remember the ASR as 92 AC 16M, but I made this sort of saying and I still forget it, but it means 92 academic weeks and completed in 16 calendar months. So this is how I try to remember it. Of course, it needs to be CRICOS registered, and all instruction needs to be in English. Let's say that, for example, though, Australian study requirement, would RPL count in a situation like this? Because a lot of our clients, they have RPL, so they do have an Australian qualification, but would RPL count for them to meet the Australian study requirement? What do you reckon? The answer would be no, because they didn't actually complete a Cricos course, and they didn't actually attend they didn't actually attend the classes. So it wasn't even done in 16 months. So when you go to this part in an EOI, right, where they ask for your educational qualifications, you may have the qualification, right? You may have the actual like bachelor of, not even bachelor, I think bachelor is going to be a bit difficult. Let's say like diploma, right? You can claim 10 points for the RPL diploma of business that you get. The dates that you would put in are probably going to be the date that is just on the certificate. That's when you started it and that's when you concluded it. But you wouldn't be able to claim for ASR. So that's kind of going to be the answer to a person who says, oh, can I still claim points for my RPL certificate? Yes, you can for the qualification section, but not for ASR section. But if they had done the Diploma of Business as an actual course, then they would be able to get the 10 points for doing the diploma, for getting the diploma qualification, plus another 5 points for doing ASR. So that would be 15 points in relation to all of their study for across those two parts of the checklist. For RPL, just 10 points. This one is called the Credential Community Language Qualification, I feel, which is like the weakest part of the checkpoint, because I have never seen a client who, and I used to work at, I used to work at one of these firms where like all we ever did was EOIs. And I have never seen a client who did this and like that was the break it, that was the make it or break it. Pretty much what this recognized qualification in a credential community language is a NAATI community language certificate. So it's not exactly a certificate that lets you become a accredited translator or interpreter. It's kind of just a qualification saying that, yeah, you you're at paraprofessional level, you're a provisional translator, and they can give you 5 points for that. I think it's a short sort of course or exam or something, and you study for it and then you get the certificate and you can get 5 points. And I see a lot of people who do this out of desperation because, they've got 60 points or something and they want to get into, they want to meet the pass mark to get into the pool. So they'll do this to get that extra 65 points. So that to get to 65 points. Actually, I have one more thing to say about this. I was doing some research and the Grattan Institute, right? They actually recommended restricting access to these points because they thought that this factor really favored applicants that have like overseas qualifications, right, in community languages. And they didn't think that it was that important, and they didn't think that it really contributed to Australia's sort of scheme to try to build a more productive workforce, because really when you're living in Australia, all you really need is English. But yeah, that's just a fun fact from the Grattan Institute. This one is studying in a designated regional area. Now, if you've studied and lived in an eligible regional area, and you can't do this as distance education because, well, then you wouldn't have actually been living there. That's another 5 points, right? So for this one, in relation to whether you know or do not, when you're asking the question, okay, is it a designated regional area? You can find that on the department website for the postcodes of which areas are considered regional. So that's what it is. And then we've got partner qualifications. If you're single, you get 10 points. I guess they just don't like the idea that you've got one skilled person and then they're bringing in like, a whole family of other unskilled people. Because if you don't have a partner, then, or your partner or your spouse is actually an Australian citizen or something, or a permanent resident, then it's 10 points. You get 10 points for that. If your spouse or de facto partner is not an Australian citizen or permanent resident, but they are under 45 years old, they have competent English, and they have a nominated skilled occupation that is on the same list as your skilled occupation, and they have a suitable skills assessment, like a full skills assessment, then they can get 10 points. So pretty much they're saying, is your partner pretty much as skilled as you? So if they are, then you can get another 10 points. And by that point, I mean, honestly, that person could also put in their own EOI. If they've got a skills assessment, they could put in their own EOI and you could claim 10 points in one another's EOI. So yeah, a lot of people who will come here and are seeking to lodge an EOI who have a partner, I usually say, take this 2-prong system and do that so that you don't lose points. encourage your partner to study as much as you are, if they're okay with that. If they can't get the skills assessment, but they can at least get competent English, then at least you're not losing all of your points. You can get 5 points. But if you have a partner, they don't have, they can't get English and they can't get a skills assessment in the same list as you, then, or maybe, they are 45, then unfortunately it's going to be 0 points in that department. If you're lodging a 190, if the state or territory that you're asking to be nominated in nominates you, then it's 5 points. But if you're doing it for the 491, then you could get 15 points. So we sometimes consider this to be bonus points for nomination. And so yeah, for the 190, just think about, just all you need to know is that there's 5 extra bonus points. And for the 491, that's 15 bonus points. Sometimes you'll have a situation where the applicant, perhaps they only have about 50 points, which is going to be their raw score. That's not going to be enough for the 189, and it's also not going to be enough for the 190. But it could be with these bonus points for the 491, they could lodge an EOI asking for nomination in the 491. That's what I was just talking about before. It's clear that the point system is designed to be very comprehensive. We'll go on to the actual process now. I've got a scenario here, yeah? And let's try to put this checklist into action. So we've got Maria, and she's currently holding a 482, and she was granted this 482 just this year, and it'll be expiring 4 years from now, or 4 years from the day that it was granted. She's a transport engineer, and she held a BVC for approximately 1 year prior to being granted the 482. She's nominated the occupation civil engineer, and she's 29 years old. Her English language ability is proficient. She's got IELTS 8. 9 is what would get her superior. And her overseas skilled employment, she worked 6 years before as a civil engineer. And now she's worked in Australia. She's worked 3 years as a waitress and 2 years as a transport engineer. And I guess those 2 years were, either during the time she was holding the BVC and the 482. She's got a Master of Philosophy in Civil Engineering from the University of Newcastle. So she's very studious. She completed the professional year in engineering in 2020. And I don't know about her, if she can get any ASR points, if she can get any specialist education points. She doesn't have any partners. We don't know if she's been studying in a regional part or what. Let's go to the very beginning, right? How many points is she going to get? She's 29, so how many points is she going to get?
30.
30, easy, nice. That's like half the points that she needs. So 30 for age. She's got proficient, so how many points is that? 10, nice. So 10 for English. And then let's go on to this one. So overseas skilled employment. So she's done 6 years as a civil engineer. Wow, okay. Bit of a problem, but one of the things that we need to think about when we think about work is that we need to make sure that whatever she was doing, so she could get 10 points, but whatever she was doing, it has to be at least 20 hours per week. And that part is in, how I said that part, this Schedule 6 is the checklist, and regulation, I think it was 2.26 AC, that part is the rules on how to apply Schedule 6. So the idea of whether somebody has worked is 20 hours per week. And anything less than that, you couldn't really say that they were working. So if she has been working for 20 hours a week as a civil engineer, and that civil engineering work was also done at the skilled level, so I would say she got her bachelor degree and she started working as a civil engineer. And I don't think that they would let you work as a civil engineer unless you had a qualification. So let's just assume that the 6 years was after she obtained her Bachelor of Engineering. Then yes, she can claim 10 points. Let's go to the next bit, Australian employment. Now she's worked 2 years, right, as a transport engineer. If you go to ANSCO, transport engineer, is that the same, I guess, as a civil engineer? If you look up civil, and also another thing that I need to mention here, for GSM, don't use ANSCO 2022 and don't use OSCAR, because for GSM, it's 2013 ANSCO that applies. And you'll find that it's not that different, but sometimes you'll find some, you'll find, for example, painting trades worker instead of painter. I think that was one of the differences. So I'm going to look up transport engineer on ANSCO 2013. And yeah, it does look like it falls underneath civil engineer, or it falls under the same occupation like category as civil engineering professionals. This is important because you can still count employment in another 6-digit ANSCO code if it's in the same sort of minor group. So if it's in a related work experience. So I guess the question that I wanted to ask was, okay, you've worked 2 years as a transport engineer, but is that related to the nominated occupation? So I went onto ANSCO to check if it is related. They are within the same unit group. So I said, okay, yeah, generally you can consider them to be related to one another, and she can claim points for that therefore. But I do want to also raise another thing, right? And she held the BVC, and let's pretend she had the work rights, right? Or if she didn't have work rights, obviously she wouldn't be able to claim that whole 1 year. So let's say that she did have work rights. Can she still claim it? Anyone know? Here, if you look at this regulation 2.27c, right? In determining whether an applicant satisfies a criterion that the applicant has been employed in a skilled occupation for a certain period, a period of employment in Australia must not be counted unless the applicant held a substantive visa or a bridging visa A or a bridging visa B authorizing them to work during that period. That means that it must not be counted. These are the only visas that they can hold to be counted for GSM. BVC doesn't count. So unfortunately, let's say that she held a BVC for 1 year out of the 2 years that she was working as a transport engineer. If it hadn't been for that BVC, then she would be able to claim those 2 years, but she can only claim 1 year because maybe she was holding a 485 before then. Does that make sense? I guess what I'm trying to say is that be careful. If you know that somebody, your client, has a visa record in their GSM and they're holding a BVC, then always think to yourself, oh, during that BVC, I won't, no matter how hard they work, we're not going to be able to use that work experience to gain points. So just remember that. Go back to the Australian points. How many points can she get? Because at least she's got 12 months. You can get at least 5 points. By the way, in SkillSelect, if you put in the start date, but you don't put in the end date, SkillSelect will update the points automatically as soon as she reaches 12 months. So maybe she's got like 11 months and 2 weeks or something. Like another 2.5 weeks later, you'll get an email from SkillSelect saying that your EOI points have been changed, please check. And then they'll let you know where it's being changed. So yeah, it's quite convenient that way so that the client doesn't have to they don't have to keep checking and keep updating. Okay, so far we've got 15 points altogether for overseas employment and Australian employment, and she hasn't reached the cap. So all good. Australian professional year, she did it, but when did she do it? She did it in 2020, which is like a good 5 years ago. So unfortunately, she's not going to get those 5 points for that one. Okay, what about her educational qualifications? So she did a Master of Philosophy, in Civil Engineering from the University of Newcastle. If you click on that, then it will tell you that it's a Master's degree of research. So yes, she did do a Master degree of research. And then here we've got from an Australian educational institution. It's from the University of Newcastle, tick. It's on Cricos, is it 2 years of academic study? So 2 years of academic study, academic years. What's academic years? It's 92 academic weeks. So here, this course was 104 academic weeks, which is pretty much 2 academic years. Okay, so she gets 10 points. It's also in a category which is relevant. So 10 points for specialist education. Next, ASR. Yeah, she would meet ASR because she's completed that Master of Philosophy thing, so she can get 5 points on that. Here, she doesn't do NATI, forget that. University of Newcastle. Let's say she lived in Newcastle. Is that a designated regional area? She studied this Master of Philosophy in Newcastle and she completed it there. So that's the one degree. And yes, she completed it. She did the Australian study requirement through that degree. If she was living there in Newcastle, and Newcastle is a designated regional area, just in the interest of time, I'm just going to tell you that it is, then yes, she gets 5 points for that as well. No partner, so 10 points. And if she lodges the 190, she gets 5 bonus points. And if she lodges the 491, she gets 15 bonus points. So that's it. So altogether, it's going to be 30 for age, 10 for English, overseas employment, 5 for Australian employment, because we had to minus 1 year because she held the BBC, 5 points for ASR, 10 points for the specialist qualification. By the way, this 3 years working as a waitress doesn't count because it's not related to her nominated occupation here. 5 points for the regional study as well, and 10 points for having no partner. So altogether, so she's got 85 points. Let's go on to the process. Obviously, you've got to create your EOI. Something that I always tell the clients whenever they're like, oh, can I lodge an EOI? I'm like, yeah, go do it. Do it, because you have to be in it to win it. If you can manage to get, the pool and the pass mark to get into pool. So if you've got 65 points, then I'm like, why not? Right? I don't see, as difficult as it is to get in, the EOI, it's not like it costs anything to submit an EOI. So go ahead and do it, and make sure that, you give it your best shot anyways. Why? Some states require you to put in something called a registration of interest. So I know that Victoria requires you to do this. New South Wales currently doesn't require us to do this. And WA, South Australia, pretty much almost everybody except New South Wales has a registration of interest process. So the first step is to create and submit an EOI, and then if you are going for the 190, then you should also put in a registration of interest or an ROI for that state, and then that's it. You wait. Every state will have its own requirements, so do need to be well across that. Sometimes each of the states also have their own skills lists. So New South Wales actually didn't have a skills list until recently. Being one of the more popular states for nomination, it's now sort of put a very condensed list of the things that they wish to see in an EOI now. And, it was a bit of a shock when first came out, because so many people were suddenly ineligible for the 190 as a result. So all they had to do was rely on the 189. I'm going to show you some data. Okay, so I'm sure that a lot of you have seen this SkillSelect EOI data, and it's so much fun to just look at and try different combinations, right? And even though I can't tell people what are the chances, I can at least give them a few numbers. There's like actual data that she's reading off that I can look at and think about. So this is the SkillSelect EOI data page. You go in here, yeah? This is the first page of the SkillSelect EOI data. The first thing you need to do is go to Next, and here, what they do is they can tell you up until this point in time, you can check how many EOIs were submitted, how many were invited, how many visas were lodged. So just because you were invited doesn't mean that the person always is going to lodge the visa, right? How many EOIs they suspended. So there are some EOIs where the person's like, oh, I don't want to go on this round. So they can suspend their own EOI. And closed just means that like the whole thing's done. They've either withdrew the EOI altogether, or they've been granted the visa. So you can choose like to see how many of these kinds of statuses are in the system as at the last day of June 2025. Then you can look at two columns to display. So for example, maybe you want to look at all of the occupations, or maybe you want to look at all of the English scores, or maybe you want to know when it was submitted, or nominated state or points or whatever. So you can click up to 2. So let's say, for example, I did in this one, what I did was I said, as a month of, this one says June 2025. On the last day of June 2025, I wanted to know how many people applied for the occupation construction project manager. I wanted to know all of the people who had submitted or lodged or invited the 189 visa. And I wanted to know how many points, also how many EOIs. On the last day of June 2025, there were less than 20 EOIs that were Lodged actually means the visa was lodged. So I don't know how, I actually have no idea how someone who didn't even pass the pool mark could lodge a visa under this one. I'm kind of thinking maybe it was in like one of those really, really remote areas, because it's not just the points that they look at. They also look at, exactly where you are working and stuff. So who knows, maybe that might be the issue. But when we say that less than 20, it could be anything between 1, you know what, it could be 0 to 19. So legit, maybe it's just 0. But then at the same time, I'm like, why would this be here? And why would there be no 60 here or 65? So anyways, that's what I was just thinking. So do you see what I mean? What I mean by this? How about this one, right? This 85 points. Someone who had a skills assessment for construction project manager, they submitted an EOI, for the 189. At the end of June, they had lodged the visa, and there were 25 people who did that. Not 1, not 2, 25. So if someone says, oh, I'm a construction project manager, and like, I don't know if I can get like an invitation to lodge a 189 visa, but I really, really would like to, then I'd be like, well, on the last day of June 2025, because, I have access to this data, right? I can see that at least 25 people, they had lodged a 189 visa for this occupation. So I wouldn't say that, it's not getting invited. It's quite, it looks quite popular. You know what? I think that you're going to have to get at least over 70 in order to be invited in the first place. So yeah. Now, you might also want to look at the previous sort of months to be like how many invitations were submitted, and how many out of those were invited, or how many out of those were lodged. So play around with this a lot. Do realize though, however, that I really don't think that this is 0 to 19. I think it's 1 to 19. So whenever I see less than 20, I think of 1. I always think of 1. They never tell you exactly 1. I think if they did, it's because you would be able to identify the person who got the invitation or lodged the visa. So I suspect that's why they just say under 20. This is really useful for the client and for yourself as well. Recently, I had an email from a client. She's a business management consultant, and she was asking about how many points do you think that she needs to get, and which states are accepting business management consultant the most? And then I said, well, okay. And then I had a review of the latest SkillSelect expression of interest data. And this is information that is up to date as at 31st of July 2025. And I looked at the trends for the management consultant occupation, and it indicated that Victoria and South Australia are actually the 2 most likely states for nomination, because they had the highest numbers of EOIs that had the status lodged, which means that they lodged a visa in that occupation. And also they had the highest number of invited status as well. So that tells us that Victoria and South Australia, they've been looking at registrations of interest, and they've been looking at these management consultants, right? So probably people who are working for KPMG or Ernst & Young. Other states, unfortunately, they've got either lower lodged numbers, or any states that had minus 20 or just didn't show up, just meant that they weren't prioritizing in that area at all. So I could at least tell them that this is what the strongest is, and this is definitely where to avoid. I try to give them something a little bit more substantial. So this is how I would help the client, and this is how I hope that the rest of our firm would help the client as well. We'll navigate all of these areas and try to getting the invitations very, very competitive. But at the same time, if the client wants to do that, then they want to do that, then we should we should give them the best chance possible. And that concludes my presentation. All right, thanks guys, see you later.